names on here as well. But tell us where you're from. You'll see there's a Q&A section or a chat section. Please let us know where you're from. Nora joined. Sue Cooper saying hello to everyone. Who am I missing? She's coming in a lot now. All right. We're just going to give about a minute or so for everyone to get on board and get a glass and get their bottles ready. You can open those bottles in the meanwhile. Saves you a bit of time for doing it later on. Emily Gray saying her bottle is open already. Good stuff. Anya Delport. John, do you know Anya Delport?
No, I don't.
John joined. Welcome, everyone. We are, for those that are just joining, we're just giving everyone a moment to get themselves settled in. Okay, joining from Van der Bijl Park, Johannesburg, Cape Town, more from Cape Town. Sunningdale, Chantel, welcome. Also Cape Town. Okay, more Joburg. All right. Okay, so we've got a good mix, John. I don't know if you can see from locals of Africans, but also some from the UK joining.
Nice. Yeah, I saw someone from Sunningdale, where I went to school, not far from there.
All right. Okay. Val, Santon, Portugal. There you go. So we've
gone international.
Yeah, we've had some as far as Minnesota and Spain and all over. So, some people are fortunate enough to have a wine tasting in the morning, which I guess is a good enough reason to sign up for these. Okay. I think we're pretty much, there's more Pretoria, just past the Bolton curtain, there you go. Yeah, great to see where you're all from, and welcome to this, the first of 6 wine tasting cooking alongs that we'll be having. It all started out, during the lockdown period. We wanted to interact with our followers and people that enjoy Benguela Cove wine. So having a sister property where John is based at the moment, and I'll tell you more about that in a second. In the UK, people were fortunate enough to be able to buy wine during the lockdown. I know it's not something we really want to talk about, but we could get wine to them, and while people were at home, we were talking to them over Zoom. Annie, our chef, was preparing food as well for or a recipe that they could cook along with, and it became so popular that, as I mentioned, it branched out to the rest of Europe and the US and obviously South Africa as well. So when alcohol sales opened up this side again, we got quite a few requests on, can we do something similar with these online wine tastings? And of course, we, as much as I enjoy making the wines, talking about them and telling you about them and sharing them is as much of the enjoyment. And I'm sure the same goes to John, the chef, joining us as well. So I think most of you will be familiar with Jean Delport joining us. So John is at a sister property of Benguela Cove in the UK called Leonard's Lee Lakes and Gardens. He is the head chef or executive chef. John, forgive me if I don't get all those titles right. But at a restaurant called Interlude, and enjoyed quite a lot of press recently. John and the team from Interlude recently awarded with a Michelin Star. So quite a big deal, obviously. John only being the second South African chef to achieve this. And Interlude being the first vineyard restaurant in England to achieve a Michelin star. So obviously something to be very proud of. And once again, John, congratulations. So John is South African born. He worked all over the show, the Northern Hemisphere, obviously in South Africa, recently moved to the UK. And when I spoke to him before he left and why he's doing it and what drove his decision, in his answer to me was quite easy without thinking about it. Is he told me, because my dream is to achieve a Michelin star, and in less than a year's time he did exactly that, which is amazing. And I'm still a bit dumbstruck by how quickly he's achieved it. So John, again, well done. And maybe talking about you, what have you got in store for us as far as the cooking along goes today?
Thanks for the introduction, Jan. Yeah, I mean, obviously getting that star was one of our biggest things to get it so quickly. So it's been a big blessing in disguise, because I think this year would have been a very difficult year to try and achieve what we did. Right, so throughout the series, we tried to put a couple of recipes together that was something that was easy to do at home, something that's fun, but something that also has a bit of what we call a chefy twist that I think some people are quite interested in doing back home. So for today's recipe, we put together a pea risotto. So it's spring here, summer here, so we've got a few different alternative ingredients, unfortunately, to what you have, but frozen peas and things like that will work well. So we're calling it a spring pea risotto. I'll show you how to make the risotto nice and bright, vibrant green. We're serving that with braised oxtail. And then I'll just show you how to garnish it up with a few bits and bobs that I've put together that you can quite easily get at the shops. Or if you want to keep it simple, keep it at home. So before we go too far with the in-depth of wine and things like that, I just want to quickly show you to get the risotto going. And then while we're chatting throughout the next 40 minutes or so, I'll just be cooking in the background. Johan, if you have any questions, just come straight to me and I'll answer them. And what we'll do is we'll do a recap right at the end if it's necessary. The recipe is available online. It will be published. It might have been published already. If you have any questions, just dial them in for us, and then I'll try and answer them all for us at the end of the thing. But like I said, we kept it very basic, very simple. I think risotto is something nice from home. It's not often done, so and it's quite easy and quick to make, even if you're doing a dinner party or something like that. All right, so obviously we've got our wine ready, which we'll come back to now. So what we're going to do is we're just going to get started quickly with, I like to make a risotto in a pan, depending on how many portions you're making. I think you've got more control, because what we're going to do with our risotto is we want to keep it moving the whole time. So I'm just going to quickly get a good glug of olive oil into our pan and get it warm. I'm just working off of induction in the restaurant, so it just might take a couple of seconds to get warm. All right, right into there, we're going to put about 1 onion that's been chopped nice and fine. I use shallots, more flavor, but white onions, brown onions, whatever you get at home will be great. I like to give quite a excess amount of onion to risotto. To me, this adds a lot of flavor into the depth of your base. So you'll see there's a lot of onion that's been really finely chopped. It's almost the same volume as the rice, which is a nice handy tip. But whatever you got at home, I think risotto is something fun as well. You don't have to worry about recipes and things like that. You can kind of just throw things together, and it always kind of works as long as you can bring it back together at the end. In there, I've just put about 4 cloves of garlic, and we're just going to sweat this now nice and quickly and try and get all those flavors coming out. Might need another glug of oil in there. And then a pinch of salt. Always put a pinch of salt in the base of your cooking. Just start getting the flavors to start marrying together like that.
John, you obviously make it sound and look easy, but whenever I talk to people, they say, "Oh no, our challenge is to make risotto." I mean, 1 to 10, how easy is it to make a risotto at home for someone like myself?
So what I like about risotto is that it's almost like one pot cooking. So when you come home after a long day of work, it's not a lot of effort and stuff. So I would say it's, out of an ease scale of 1 to 10, I would say it's probably around about a 7 or an 8. depending on how complicated you want to make it. If you make it very basic, just a nice plain Parmesan risotto, it's very, very simple.
Okay.
As long as you've got a few basics. But everybody has kind of powdered stocks and things at home. Normally have cheese in the fridge. It's a nice way to use off cuts of stuff as well, which is normally quite fun. Right, so I've just got this up to temperature now. Now I'm just going to turn it down and just get the onions to sweat a little bit. Ideally, we want them to go to nice and translucent. And this way the flavors will become nice and sweet. We'll get rid of the harshness of the onion, and the garlic will start marrying really nicely. What we did is we're going to try and keep it, I think I said before, keep it simple, so as little as possible, so we can get the proper flavors of the pea and the risotto and the oxtail coming through. So pea is quite a delicate flavor, it's quite a sweet flavor, but it can get masked quite quickly. So I'm just keeping it very, very simple with just onions, shallots, garlic, olive oil, a little bit of crushed black pepper, pretty good. And then if you had a little bit of time or something like that, you could throw it into the base. But I've just decided to keep it nice and simple for everyone at home.
Okay. Gotta love it. Say we're keeping it nice and simple. If as John mentioned, it is on the site. We'll post it again so you can get it from there for those bits and pieces that you've missed. Shall we get into some of the wine bits and pieces? John,
yeah.
We'll keep an eye on you, and we'll chat a little bit later.
Yes, let's do it.
Right, so first things first, and important, we're covering the Benguela Cove, the estate Syrah. So I'm just, for our first session, just to sketch a bit of a background, and this might go on 5 or 10 minutes longer than the usual sessions, but just to familiarize everyone with wine and the Western Cape where we grow our wine. I'm just going to give you a little bit of background on wines of South Africa. So you're welcome to pour you a glass of wine while we just quickly give you a little bit of insight into wine. So these sessions are part food, it's part wine and the wine tasting, but we also want to give like a little bit of an educational and a fun value to it. So it's, you know, for me, it's nothing more boring than watching a winemaker sniffing you and telling you it smells of apples, pears, and rose petals. It's all great, but we all smell and sense wines differently. So we're not going to spend a lot of time on what it tastes like and smells like. We're rather going to do more information on the specific wine. So just on the Western Cape, where pretty much the majority of South Africa's wines are grown, is a little bit up north at the Orange River as well, of course. But at the Western Cape, at the bottom tip, is where most of the action is. And this is a map, and all these colored sections are different wine of origins. So you'll at the bottom of wine, you'll always see it says Stellenbosch or Swartland or Walker Bay or Paarl or whatever the case is. That is happened over years. We've identified that all these regions, these little colored pockets, when you stick one vine, and let's use Syrah because that's what we're tasting today. If you stick a Syrah vine, all these pockets, be it Swartland or Michelin-Starred or Elim or wherever, you're going to get completely different wines, even though it's the same grape. So those vines are influenced by the soil that they're planted in, the climate of that region, and then to a smaller extent also the slopes, altitude of these various regions. So because all of them are different, they're demarcated from each other, and they're all given individual names or wine of origins as we call it. So all of these factors combined together, and this is our wine word of the day that you can go and impress your friends with, is called terroir. Terroir is a French term that is used for all the factors that influence wine. So as I said, the soils, the slopes, the climate, all of those factors influence what we have on the glass. And because it's different all over, you have different wines coming from different regions. The There is a Q&A section at the bottom. So if you have any questions, we'll pop into the Q&A section every once in a while, get some of those questions and try to answer as much as possible of them. So just if you have a question, you're more than welcome to put it in the Q&A section rather there than in the chat, because we might lose it in the chat section. So how it all started in South Africa, it goes back to 1652 with Jan van Riebeeck. So as you know, the Cape Town was the halfway point between the guys from Europe exploring the East. They've made that a stop for fresh goods. Wine, grapes obviously was part of it. But then the Dutch soon realized they weren't great at making wine. They should probably be sticking to beer. So they got a couple of French families in later on as well to help with the wine growing and making down in the Cape. 7 years later, in 1659, and this is an actual entry from Jan van Riebeeck, today praised to God, wine was made first time from Cape grapes. So as a wine-making country, Africa is definitely not what is seen as New World or a young wine-producing country. We've been making wine way before the likes of Australia, US, Chile, Argentina, New Zealand. So we're kind of not as old as what is called the old world European countries, but we're part of the new world. And so we're kind of in a spot in the middle. And interestingly enough, our wine styles also don't really fit old world or new world. We're kind of in a space of our own, which makes South African wines quite interesting from a stylistic point of view for the international market. Coming a little bit closer to home, to Benguela Cove, I take it that most of you might have been to Hermanus before. Hermanus, obviously a popular tourist town, famous for its whales, of course, but also for the wineries, the restaurant, the many famous beaches. So if you've been to Hermanus before, on your way into Hermanus, on the right-hand side, you'll see a couple of vineyards running down to the ocean's edge. That is Benguela Cove, where we recently completed, well, recently, 2017, completed our winery, wine tasting facility, beautiful restaurant, wedding facility, conferences, everything. So if you've not been, you haven't popped in, you're missing out. It's the kind of the gateway into the bigger Walker Bay wine growing region. Just some more shops, the restaurant. So Benguela Cove, as I said, this is the road heading into Hermanus with these vineyards that you see next to the road. All of this that I'm showing out now is about 220 hectares, of which 60 hectares is planted with vineyards. So all these vines planted here today are the first ever vines to be planted on this piece of land. Simple reason being that being so close to the ocean, it is extremely marginal as to where you can have a vineyard. It's windswept, you've got the risk of salt burn from the ocean. So if you open a viticulture textbook, this would be a great example of where not to have a vineyard. So no one ever dared having a vineyard where we have it now. But the spin-off vines grown in these marginal regions is that the vines are naturally under stress, the vigor is lower, the crop load is lower, and these wines, these stress levels and growing vines in these regions makes for wines with quite a unique character and personality to them. So I've been fortunate to make wine from just about all over the Western Cape, from most of the grape growing regions, and Benguela Cove being one of them. And I can truly tell that there is no other vineyard or spot that gives you the same character or authenticity in the wines than Benguela Cove. So when we started out Benguela Cove's wines in the winery, it was for us a no-brainer that we want to go down the path of making estate wines. So you'll see on the label, it actually says estate wine. So this is not something we can just stick onto the bottle. It's certified by a body that comes in and checks that what we do and how much grapes we have. Are we producing a similar volume of wine? So to be a certified estate winery means that you can only use grapes grown on your property. It's made on your property, bottled on your property. So everything has to happen on the property. Nowadays, it's so common to go out to your neighboring grape growing regions, be it Constantia at the back, or Durbanville, or Elgin, or Potterfield over here, or the Michelin-Starred up here, and buy components that you are lacking, be it fruit or tannin or whatever your property is not giving you, to go and source it somewhere else. We're not doing it, only working with grapes coming from the simple reason why we can do it and pull it off successfully is because it's quite a unique property in the sense that it's a bit of a freak, actually, that we've got 5 different soil types on this 60-hectare region, where it's more common to have maybe 2, sometimes 3 soil types. We're blessed to have 5 different soil types. So these are just some of them. I'm not going to bore you with the names of them, but it's like an iron-rich one. This is decomposed granite. Chalky soils. We've got these pink, like quartz stones. And what was quite cleverly done back when, in the days when they planted the vineyard, which the first vines, for those of you that passed by, it's 18 years ago, believe it or not. So our vines are all between 14 and 18 years of age at the moment. But because no one had any track record of what was, there was no history of the property, they went and planted Syrah, Sauvignon Blanc, Chardonnay, Cabernet on all the various soil types. And to add to the soil types and how unique that is, what is also interesting about Benguela Cove, it's almost like property is like a bell shape to it. So we've got southern slopes, northern slopes, some eastern and some western slopes. And again, coming back to the terroir thing, and in the way the sun passes, in South Africa, the northern slopes see more sunlight during the day. So that's warmer, where the southern slopes don't see the same amount of sunlight. So that's cooler slopes. So if you have the same vine, Syrah, on northern slopes and southern slopes, 2 completely different wines, leave alone all the different soil types that again gives you more different wines. To add on to that and not to confuse you, we've also planted it with 5 different clones of Syrah. So, if I just did a quick math, if you take all the variables we have on the property in terms of slopes, soil types, clones, row directions, we can make up to 340 different Syrahs just from Benguela. And it's for this reason that we don't have to go and buy in fruit from anywhere else. We've got it all going on the one property. So this is just some of the images. This is the southern slopes. This is the opposite side of the property, looking towards Arabella and Elgin. This is northern slopes, and the wine we're tasting today, the Syrah, is from these northern slopes. So a little bit warmer, enjoys a little bit more sunlight. So it makes for a slightly bigger, richer, more juicy wine, where wines from the opposite side of the property, where it's a little bit cooler, it's more spicy, more savory. But bear in mind, we're still sitting right on the ocean's edge, so it's still cool climate. So when I say warmer, it's within a cooler climate concept. So there'll still be this golden thread of cool climate wines going through this. So we can chat a little bit later on the differences between cool climate versus moderate or warmer climate wines and how they're all different. But for now, our focus is on this one coming from the northern slope. So this wine, as I mentioned, sits in our estate here. So these are all labeled with this packaging. So they're all similar in style. So what we quite commonly do is to have more than one Sauvignon, more than one Syrah, for instance. So depending on what soil, what slope they're coming from, they either fit into a different profile. So the wines that go into this label, our estate tier, are from those vineyards that benefit from a little bit of aging or longer aging, be that in barrel or in bottle. So slightly more, not more serious wines, but it's a bigger style that needs more time to be drink ready, where some of our vineyards are more fruitier, more softer, more accessible when they're young. They will go to our Lighthouse collection, which is wines that we can release a little bit younger, they're more fruit driven, more softer. We'll have some of the Lighthouse wines during the course of the 6 weeks, but for tonight, we're looking at the estate Syrah. So, lots of talking. Let's get to the important bit, the tasting of the wine. So, I hope you all poured yourself a glass of wine by now. So wine tasting and wine appreciation, you'll often see people swirling their glass like this. It's not to try and look like a wine snob or to be all fancy. You can try it at home. If you don't have the confidence to swirl the glass like this, you can just keep it on a flat surface and just make like a small circle on your table, and you'll see the wine will start swirling by itself until you've got enough confidence to just to do it by yourself without the wine going onto the person next to you. Luckily, we're sitting a meter apart from each other now. But why do we swirl? It's as you do this, it almost makes like mini airwaves, which helps push the aromas out of the glass. So by doing this and pushing the aromas up, when you sniff it, you get to sense the aromas much easier. So wine tasting is when we judge wine professionally, it goes by color. There's a certain criteria when it comes to color. There's a certain mark or a point allocated to the aromas that we smell. And then most important, because we don't only look and smell wine, we actually drink it, is the taste of the wine. So if you quickly want to have a swirl and a taste yourself, we can talk through it. As I said, I don't want to spend too much time on what it tastes and smells like, because for me, green apple, your yellow apple might be someone else's plum. We all smell and taste things differently. So if someone tells you you should taste dark chocolate, that's not necessarily mean you're gonna taste the same. It comes with a bit of practice. You kind of build up a vocabulary over time on all the descriptors and the flavors. Once you sense pepper or spice, next time you pick up a glass, it just like it comes back. But let's have a look at this wine. So for me, it's got, I'm not sure if you're familiar with five spice, a little bit of five spice, peppery, hints of aniseed. But then typical of cooler climate Syrahs, it's got this like almost like a smoky, savory, cherry tobacco type character to it. So pepper, smoky, spicy notes, quite often used as descriptors for Syrah. Syrah is known for those flavors. In this case, also reminds me a little bit of Turkish delight and nice velvety or violets for that matter on the nose. But yeah, let's taste it as well. So I explained to you that what we're trying to do is to showcase Benguela Cove by just using our own grapes. So when it comes to the wine making as well, we do everything that we can not interfere with the wine making processes or technique or oak barrels, anything that can alter what we naturally get from the vineyard. We try and minimize that. We winemakers like to get involved and do lots of things with the wines, but for Benguela Cove, because we have this unique location, it's all about showing you Benguela Cove, our address, and what Syrah from Benguela Cove tastes like. So it's capturing our piece of land in the glass. So we don't interfere too much. We don't excessively extract tannins or add too much wood. We want to keep it as pure as possible. So When it comes to the palate, another thing that's important, so it's showing a sense of place. The other thing is balance. All our wines, balance is absolutely key. And with balance, I mean it's a balance between the alcohol, the fruity flavors, the acidity, and the wood. And all of those should be in perfect harmony. It shouldn't be wood this side or excessive fruit or excessive spiciness. Everything should be in balance, and we can achieve this balance because of all the components, as I mentioned, that we have available on the property. So the entry is nice, soft and succulent tannins, and then they're almost like seamless. They go and they finish quite velvety without any excessive dryness or tannin or too much sweet, fruity flavors. And again, it comes back to that drinkability and the balance that we offer in our wines. Okay, so we're not going to stand still too long on this, but this is just tasting, you know, on your palate where you perceive different flavors, saltiness, acidity. They all sit on different places on your palate. And we might share this with you afterwards on social media somewhere. If you're looking to improve your tasting ability and your tasting vocabulary, this might help you, because often when you taste, you don't like fruity flavors or spicy flavors, but I can't really put my finger on exactly what it is. So this helps. This is called an aroma wheel for wine tasting. So if it's fruity flavors, you can go, is it citrus fruit, berry fruit, tropical fruit, dry fruit, and then you can branch out and say, okay, if it is berry fruit, is it blackberry, raspberry, strawberry, blackcurrant, the same with spice. It just helps you to identify what it is that you're sensing. So keep on sniffing, keep on sipping, and let's check in what John is up to. How's things going on your side?
Good, thanks. So what we've done since you left is we just had the onions and garlic going nice and slow. Between that time, I then added the risotto rice or borio rice, very easily attainable at home in the shops. What we did, we chucked that in with a little bit of more oil, and we just toasted the rice with the onions. It's quite key to try and toast the rice, not getting color, keeping it blonde, but that just imparts a lot of flavor into the rice. As soon as any liquid hits the rice, the flavors kind of stop being absorbed. So we really want to try and just almost sweat the rice with the onions, just a touch. From there, we deglazed with white wine. I used your lighter Sauvignon Blanc for this one. I just like a light, quite acidic, dry wine. But to be fair, any white wine would really do. But I find our Sauvignon Blanc works really, really well in the base. From there, we've just been starting to, once we cook out all the wine, we just started adding stock slowly, bit by bit. What I've done is I've preheated our stock in a pot. So this is where you can get creative if you really want. You can flavor your stocks. I'm just using a basic chicken stock. I find it gives it a nice overall finish, not too strong, not too meaty, but you can still get the vegetables coming through. So we've just been adding it spoon by spoon. You don't want to flood your rice, otherwise you're going to create a little bit of slop. So this is what takes a little bit of time and love. So if you're chatting with someone in the kitchen, it's quite fun. You just keep adding a ladle by ladle, and then just keep working your rice very slowly. Don't damage the rice. You just want to very gently agitate it, and just work in the stock as we go. Yeah, can you see kind of what we've been doing? I'm not sure if the angle's enough.
I'm following you totally. Yeah. When it comes to pairing wine with food or food with wine, what is it that you're looking at? What is it that you're looking at? Or how do you go about it? And maybe why the specific dish with this wine or vice versa?
Yeah, so the wine that you selected first up, which I was actually quite pleased about, this is one of my favorite wines from the estate. It's a lovely drinking wine, but it works really, really well with food. Heavy, hearty dishes, I think, works really nicely. So when I look at this wine, for instance, I kind of want to match up to it. It's not too overpowering, but you need something with a food that's going to match up to the heaviness of the wine. But obviously, like, there's not that many tannins in it. So we kind of want something that's a little bit richer, something that's a little bit more fresher as well. So just to kind of complement what we're doing. There's very much different styles of what we look at when we're pairing in the restaurants and things like that. We can either kind of work with the food or work completely against the food. I think those are the two major ones that we can kind of do. When we're working with the food, we kind of add the wine, almost becomes the ingredient that the plate is missing. So say we've done a plate of duck, a couple of vegetables, and we really want that cherry, fruity flavor to come through. We could use a wine to kind of also add or accentuate something else that might not be quite sweet enough. So in that way, wine can work really well if you're just pairing alongside. To go completely opposite, very acidic wines kind of need something that's going to really kill the acidity into the dish. So then you're going for something that's really rich, really creamy. Drink it with acidic wine, and it kind of null and voids everything, and it just kind of marries in your mouth and comes together really, really well. There's lots of different techniques. It's quite a complicated process, but it's quite fun. So I always encourage when people cook for a specific wine, cook what you enjoy eating, and naturally you'll start enjoying the wine with them. Just go with the basic things where red wines kind of go slightly heavier meats, white wines more fish and chicken. But saying that, you can turn it upside down and still do whatever you want. I think it's fun just to keep on playing. That's what I think was also intriguing about food and wine industry. There's always space and scope for someone's own vision. So yeah, what I've done now with risotto, it's pretty much been cooking for while you're cooking, about 10 minutes or so. It won't take much longer than this. So we've got to the point now where it's kind of done. So what we're going to do is just keep adding stock and stirring it so it slowly absorbs all the stock. And we get to a point where the rice is, we say it's cooked, but it's still got a little bit of a hard grain inside. So if you lift it up, you should still see the outside of the grain. I don't know if I'll be able to show you this on camera. Let's try and see if you can see. I don't know if you can see the rice there, Johan. Yeah. Okay, so what we have is we've got a translucent outside, and then in the middle of the rice grain, you have a white piece. So that's the piece that we kind of want. So we want a little bit of bite into our rice. So another foolproof way, take your rice cube, and then you squeeze it, and then you should have a little bit of a hard piece in between it'll squeeze out. And then we know our rice is pretty much done. So we don't want to overcook it too much. Because what we're going to do now is we're going to start adding all the lovely stuff that kind of brings it all together. So what we've prepared to go with this rice is oxtail. I wasn't going to braise oxtail here for 5 hours in front of everybody. So we've pre-done that. But what we've done is we've just taken what's quite interesting that I found when I moved here to the UK is that oxtail is actually not used readily around. It's kind of seen as an off-cut piece of meat and was kind of not really enjoyed. So chefs have slowly started getting back into using oxtail, but whereas in South Africa, everybody's mad about oxtail. It's one of our favorite winter dishes and winter stews. So coming from a household is one of my favorite dishes. And if it's done properly, it's really, really nice. So what we did is we did a basic braise, 5 hours in the oven, covered it with lots of stock, lots of wine, and cook it. Don't be scared to overcook it. You want to give it a nice amount of time that's just completely falling off the bone. I strained it all out. I shredded the meat, and then I kept that all separate. I threw away the veg and stuff. The liquid, once you've strained it, keep that. That's your valuable gold. You want to reduce that, and you want to take that all the way down. So if your pot is, say, give you this instance for this pot, say you got that much stock in your pot, you're going to take it all the way right to the end where starts going sticky. And that becomes almost like a glaze. And then what you're going to do is you're going to fold that glaze back over your meat. And then, let's see, this isn't quite warm yet. I'll just warm it up for us quick. Touch and stuff there.
So while John is doing that, where in Pretoria can we buy these wines? I'm not sure which ones are closest to you. Definitely the easiest way to go about it is an online shop, and we deliver nationwide if you do order 6 bottles or more. That's the most convenient and the easiest one and the short answer. Are we recording this? Yes, we are recording this, and we will make it available on our YouTube channel afterwards. And then John, one for you on your style or philosophy or style of cooking that you, or cuisine that you're doing over there. What is it that you?
Yeah, so sorry, just while we're just before this gets lost, that's what I've done to the. So that's pretty much a whole braise that's been reduced down and then just covered again with all the own juices. So all the flavor stays there, and we'll just be dressing the risotto with that now. Style of cooking. What we do is we've always cooked traditional English French cooking background. We've kept that the same. What we've now, which we can use quite well to our advantage, is use our South African heritage to what we do here. So we don't necessarily do South African dishes, but we do South African flavors and profiles, ideas and things like that, and then work it back into the way that we cook with old French, English cuisine. So it marries quite well. We don't do anything too excessive. It's all kind of low key, but a lot of our explanation does come through. So that's what we've done and adopted an interlude. And we've had a great reception with that, and it's done quite well. We like to keep the food, it's formal, but we try to keep it still fun and playful where we can. So there's a lot of interaction that happens at the table. And our main philosophy is to work with the gardens itself. So Leonard's League Gardens is 240 acres of wild and cultivated areas of English woodland. And naturally within English woodland, you can forage for loads of different wild products. So what we've done is we can grow things within the state. For us, we can use different things within the restaurant. So with every single dish, we have something that comes directly from the estate itself, whether it be from our bees. We've got pigs every now and then. We've got our own flock of chickens where we get eggs for a very specific dish that we would make. The garden team for us have cultivated a few things where we can grow. We go and forage. We've learned a whole lot of different stuff we can go and fetch. We've got a nuttery that's just been planted that we'll be start getting nuts fairly soon. So yeah, there's always loads of interesting things that we always constantly doing and building on. One of the fun things that we're looking at doing is integrating a small snail farm onto the restaurant, and we'll be able to use our own snails that have been reared and raised on the estate. And then we could also be able to get rid of our excess produce or anything that might not be going through. So we do a dining experience more than just a sit-down meal. We go from anything from 18 to 24 courses, depending on season, availability, and things like that, with extensive information and things like that. But there's not too inundating. And we carry it from the bar experience right through to desserts and everything else. So it's something that's quite fun, something that's different. You don't know what you're eating on the night. It's a blind experience. So we try and surprise you with every dish that comes through. And we change these things often, so it's very seasonal. If we can only get something for 2 weeks, it's on the menu for 2 weeks, and we take it off and we try something new. We try and keep things as seasonal as possible. So yeah, that's pretty much just a basic rundown.
I was just, as you were talking, I was just sharing some images of Interlude and what it looks like, so everybody gets a feel for it. You're obviously coming from the Interlude kitchen.
Yes, yeah. So the kitchen's abandoned at the moment. Everybody will be back fairly soon. So yeah, we've got the whole place to ourselves for tonight, which is quite great. Right, so the risotto is pretty much there, Johan. Would you like me to start finishing it off and explaining a little bit more in depth what we've done, or you wanted to carry over some more slides?
Quickly carry on with a few questions and a bit on the wine making itself. So you've got a bit of time there to get or you can just relax. Sure. So there's some more questions that were popping up. The difference between Syrah, which is on our side, versus Shiraz. So good question. Thanks for asking that. It's exactly the same thing. It's made from the same grape. From the Syrah or Shiraz grape. It's called different names in different parts of the world. But you'll see in South Africa, like we produce Syrah and Shiraz. So it's just an indication of the style of the wine. So when you, most of the time when you're talking cooler climate, talking more the savory, spicy side of the Shiraz grape, we label it as a like we would do in France or Northern Hemisphere, where they also have this more savory, spicy, peppery side of the grape. Then countries that are more fruit forward, more fruit and sweeter style. In South Africa, that's more fruity, sweeter, chocolatey style of it, we label as Shiraz. So it's the same thing, labeled differently, coming from different regions. As I said, cooler climate lends itself more towards the Syrah side of the grape, where regions like Robertson and Paul and some parts of Stellenbosch would be more like Shiraz in style. The one is not superior to the other. Stylistically, they're just totally different, and it's up to you as to which style you enjoy or just which you feel like on that day. Um, Another question was South Africa, how big are we in a global context? We're the seventh biggest wine producer in the world, and last time I checked, we produce about 1 billion bottles a year, obviously for local consumption and export. Another question is Shiraz our most famous wine? Difficult question. Shiraz is the second biggest planted red grape in South Africa after Cabernet Sauvignon. South Africa, I always mention this when I do tastings internationally, I often get the question, so what is your flagship grape? Is it Chenin? Is it Pinotage? Most countries have a signature grape, like Australia's got Chardonnay, Argentina has got Malbec, and South Africa, as I showed you on that map, it's extremely diverse. For every 50 kilometers you drive, you're in a totally different space in terms of soils, altitude, proximity to the ocean. So we don't have one grape that works across all our regions and that we put up as our flagship varietal. Yes, we're known for Pinotage because it's a uniquely South African grape that started in South Africa. We're known for Chenin because there's a lot of Chenin plantings in South Africa, but they're not our flagship or our signatures by no means. So yeah, I think what we're known for is diversity in that we've got all these different styles and grapes that we grow here just because of how diverse things are down in the Western Cape. I mean, we're one of 6 plant kingdoms in the world, the Western Cape. And just talking of diversity to really give you an idea of how diverse we are, is that in the Western Cape, we've got more plant species than the entire Northern Hemisphere together. Okay, so, and just more to that, another stat is that on Table Mountain alone, we've got more plant species than all of the UK together. So that, I think, really pictures on how diverse soils, climates, everything is down here and why we don't have a signature grape or grapes. Sorry, that was the long answer to the question. Let's just quickly on the wine and the wine making. And as I said, the first session takes a little bit longer because we want to just give you that background on South Africa and South African wines and where it all started. From there onwards, it will go a bit quicker. Just see if I can get this to go back to the beginning. Try one more time. Okay, so let's just quickly tell you, and we'll do this every time just on the wine making, be it red wine or rosé wine next week, and then a sparkling wine, and then blended wines, how we go about them differently and how the wine making process in the cellar is different for all of them. So this is, John, this is my kitchen in the background. This is the winery. So we'll take you on a bit of a tour and tell you about the equipment and what we do and what we're about here. But there's a saying, age-old saying, that all great wines from across the world have a view of the ocean. So that's important. We tick that that box for a starter. That's a shot from some of our Syrah vineyards. And then coming closer to this wine, so we do one of two things on Benguela Cove. We can do what you see on the left-hand side is a mechanical or machine harvester. We like using this for grapes like Sauvignon Blanc, which is quite sensitive to higher temperatures. So with this machine, we can take it off middle of the night, early hours of the morning when it's nice and cool, get it to the winery really fast, and the grapes aren't exposed to heat or any oxygen whatsoever. So it's just it's a timing and a temperature thing. When it comes to red grapes, we prefer to pick them by hand for the simple reason that with red grapes, the fermentation is in contact with the skin of the berry. Whites, we just straight away press out the juice. With reds, we like to do a sorting because everything goes into the fermentation. It's not just the juice we squeeze out. So for reds, we tip all our little lug boxes onto a long sorting table, which is a vibrating table. As they vibrate, the bunches turn around. We get to inspect them. So anything that's got wind damage or unripe berries, whatever we don't want in the fermentation, we can remove at this step. So that's just the bunches on their way into what we call a destemmer. So destemmer is just removing all these little berries have to be removed from the stem in the middle because the stem is not part of the fermentation process. So it's extremely harsh and bitter. So we want the stems out. So once we've removed the stems, all the berries go onto a second sorting table where we do an individual berry sorting. So you can imagine millions of berries crossing these tables over the course of the season. Extremely labor intensive, but where we're at and what we set ourselves out to achieve, it's all about high-end, top quality wine. So we're pulling out all the stops when it comes to quality of our wines. So it takes a little bit longer or way longer, but you know, when you're in the game of producing high-end wines, this is what you have to go through. So again, anything we don't want in the ferment comes out. So as I said, in the case of red wine, everything goes in what we want to go into the fermenting tank. The reason for reds, why we keep it in contact with the skin, if you push or squeeze out those red berries, what's inside, the pulp or the juice is still white, like you would have for a white wine. The color, the red color you see in your glass, that comes from the skin of the berry, that red skin. So over the course of a week or 10 days that we have this fermentation, it's almost those grape skins are like a tea bag when you put it in water. Over time, it extracts not only color, but it extracts all the aroma and the tannins. The tannins are those fluttering feeling that you get. For each grape, it's different. You can, like with tea, you can over extract it and it's bitter and not pleasant. You can under extract it and it doesn't have the right intensity and richness. Every year is different, every grape is different. When it comes to wine making, there's no recipes that you can follow. You're dealing with Mother Nature, so no 2 years are the same. So you're constantly tasting and evaluating what's going on. What you see on this picture is a process that we call pump over. So we're taking some of the juice from the bottom of the vessel and we're just pumping it over the skin. So with this constant transfer of the juice, it's almost like pushing the tea bag. You extract the color, the aromas, and all the tannins out of the skins, and it gradually over time becomes pink and then red in color. Once we're satisfied with what we've extracted, the fermentation is close to finished, we'll remove that juice from the skins and then we'll age it either in these stainless steel vessels, but more commonly in the case of red wine production in these barrels. This is 300-liter barrels. In our case, we use French oak barrels. We can go into detail on different types of barrels, maybe a little bit later, but in here, in the case of the Syrah, we kept this wine in these barrels for 20 months before we started tasting all our vineyards. So remember, we might have up to 20 different parcels of Syrah in the cellar. We go and taste all of them individually, and we might blend some of them together. The one's got more tannin, less fruit, and the other one's got more acidity. We can blend some of them together. We try to keep the different slopes that delivers different styles together. We can assemble some of the batches or bottle them on their own. Each year we go about it a little bit differently, but the blending process happens. Eventually we empty those barrels and it goes into bottle. All right. So that's in a nutshell the red wine making process. John, you can carry on and I'll keep an eye on some more questions that are coming in.
Sure, cool. So you'll see now, the longer you leave your risotto, the more it's going to absorb your moisture. So ideally what I've done now by holding it, we don't really want to do. So you want to kind of continuously make it, get it finished, and then enjoy your meal. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to quickly regenerate it with a little bit more stock. You'll see I use 200 grams of aboyo rice, which is in the recipe, which you'll find online. This will feed easily, depending on how big a meal you're looking for, if it's a starter or a main. But I mean, you could get easily two to 4 courses of main course meals out of the rice, depending on what you're pairing things with it. So what I'm going to do is just to speed it up a bit so that we don't take too much time. I'm just going to take some of the rice out here and then just work with a smaller portion so I can show you. And then we're going to just plate it up, finish it all off, and then make it look all presentable. Right, so I've just taken about half the rice out now. I should ideally be cooking 1 portion. I'm going to plate it something small so I can just make it nice and pretty and just show you a few little things that we can do to make it look nice if you're doing a dinner party or something like that. Right, so what we're going to do is just touch more stock. You want to get your heat back into the pan now. And what you're looking for with the risotto is a mixture that is thick and sloppy-like, but not too dry. The worst thing is to do is when you go to a restaurant or making it at home, you get this risotto, and as you go into the first spoon, it's really, really dry and hard. And it's just like eating a bowl of rice, which risotto isn't. So we want to get it nice and warm again. And get it nice and sloppy. I was going to quickly bring it up to the heat a little bit more.
So John, someone you know might know just joined us. I don't know if you can see on the screen.
I can't know.
What you're up to?
Hey.
Hi, how you doing?
Good yourself?
Oh, very well, thank you. How's lockdown been?
It's okay. It's a bit frustrating, but it's all right. Hoping or trying to cope.
I must say one of the harder things I found in lockdown was try and keep busy. We're not used to it really, are we? So it's one of those challenges. So
and just for everyone viewing, is our head chef here at Benguela Cove at the Moody Lagoon restaurant. So and he just came in. He's up to.
So Annie, I'm cooking a risotto. I'm sure you've made many of these. Well, I know you have. I've watched you make them before. So, right. So what we're going to do here, we've got this now to a stage where it's wet, but it's not too wet, and it's going to move around, but it's not going to spore out like that. So what we're going to do now is we're going to thicken this a little bit. So get it back up to the heat. We're going to add about, the original recipe is about 50 grams of butter, I think it was. So I'm just going to add a little bit more. We're going to chuck it off. I'm going to switch the heat off. Just plop in the butter like that. Cheese, I said about 60 grams of grated Parmesan. Please use Parmesan. It's the only cheese that's really going to bind it together. You can try with other alternatives, but it doesn't, it goes like quite gooey sometimes. So Parmesan gives you a really good texture. So what we're going to do is we're just going to chuck this all on top like this. What I like to do is I like to let it stand for just a couple of minutes now. A little bit more butter in there. I'm just going to put that lid on there. Right. So what that's going to do is just going to steam just for 3 to 4 minutes, and then I'm going to just work it in, and then we're going to beat it really nice and fast and get it nice and creamy, which is the characteristic of a risotto that we're looking for. In the meantime, what we have made beforehand as well, don't want to take too much time, is I've made a pea risotto. So using all the fresh peas, you can see there, we've got it nice and green. What we're going to do is, the recipe again is online. we just boiled the peas down, simmered a little bit of stock, kept it nice and fresh as possible, so there's no real other flavors besides pea, and then we just blended it down with a little bit of butter. I put it through a sieve just to get rid of any skins that might have been left behind from your blending process. But what you also want from this is a really thick, sticky puree. So don't add too much liquid to your risotto. To your pea puree, otherwise your risotto is going to become really wet and not come together. So what we're going to do is at the end is we're going to fold in that pea puree to here, and we're going to get that lovely green color. And then what I'll do is I've kept a few peas behind. I find actually that frozen peas make a nicer risotto for me, but you do lose a little bit of that fresh flavor. So some people will be very varied. Fresh peas are great. They do take a little bit longer to cook though. Frozen peas, once defrosted, they're obviously much softer to work with. So that's hence you can cook it for less. So I find a nice fresh flavor from that. But you do lose that really fresh pea characteristic, which is really, really nice to have. So what we're going to do is we're going to do that, and then I'll show you the exciting bits now towards the end. Has there been any other questions, Johan?
Yeah, so there's some questions. As part of the dining experience, can guests get to forage with you?
It's something that we're looking at doing, definitely. As it goes, the seasons is quite seasonal, so we'll kind of be in the summers and stuff. And what we do is we don't just forage for, we do our daily forage of all like little flowers and herbs and whatever we could get, that we know where it is, different leaves, mushrooms and things like that. But we're always guaranteed what we can get. But what we do is we do quite a lot of bulk harvesting. So when we know that something's in season, we go out for the day. The whole team comes and say we either go birching or we pick seeds, pick different nuts and things like that, that we know where the exact locations are. The team goes for 2 hours, picks all of that. We then break it down over the next couple of days in the restaurant and preserve it. And that way it gives us a bit of a pantry to work with in the winter months where there's not much growing, when it's like -0 outside. So we have different styles, not necessarily going everything, but we do have bits and bobs. I'm learning as we go. We started from a blank canvas when we moved here. There wasn't much that I knew of the wild stuff from the UK, so that's been quite fun. So we've got a little bit of a base now that we're comfortable with working with them. Yeah, we are looking at definitely trying to add it in.
Yeah, because a lot of what you use in the kitchen from the gardens itself, right? That's kind of you trying to incorporate.
Yeah, we try as much as we can. So every single dish definitely has something that's from the gardens, whether it's been a main ingredient or it's something that's been preserved in some way, or we've worked something or done something with the wood or whatever it might be. Yeah, there's definitely always that connection that you can visibly see and go and see in the gardens as well, which is quite fun.
So
right, so what? Sorry, before we carry on, I just want to show you here. So take the lid off. And now you can slowly see that the butter is slowly melting and all the parmesan is melted on top. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to bring that together for a minute or two, Johan, while you're talking. I'm just going to slowly spoon it in, and as it starts coming together, I'm just going to whip it a bit faster.
Okay, John. So if you don't mind, because there's some more questions for you.
Sure.
Alternatives maybe for vegetarians?
Yeah, so obviously pea risotto is, the pea itself is fine to use. Stock-wise, you can use vegetable stock is just as good, really, that comes together with it. What you can also do if you're feeling like you want to be quite creative is that you can chuck in a whole lot of if you're getting fresh peas, split all your peas out of the pods, chuck the pods inside your either veg stock or water, bring it up to the boil for a couple of minutes, switch it off and let it stand for 2 hours, and you'll make yourself a pea stock. And that's quite fun. You really get that nice fresh flavor in there, and that adds depth. If you want to kind of emulate the oxtail itself on top, aubergines work really, really well. So what I would do is I just slowly roast the aubergines for, I would say about, about 45 minutes in the oven on about 150 degrees. And then I would then cut them and smoke them a little bit in a nice hot smoke, chuck some butter on top while you're smoking, and then you can just spoon that up and put that on top. And that depth will work really well with the wine, I think, because then you're adding that meaty, smoky element that will really work well with the pea. So Johan, what we've got here now is you can see how the risotto has really come together now. It's really nice and thick. So what I do is I don't want to make it too dry. So I always make my risotto a little bit wetter, plate it all up, and then while it's sitting in the bowl, it absorbs the last bit of liquid, and you should have a perfect consistency with it. So what I'm going to do with this now is I'm going to add our pea puree like I discussed. Chuck that in. And I'm going to put, you don't really want to put heat back on once you've added your cheese and butter, because you have that option of then it's slowly starting to split out. But because I put the pea puree in, I'm just going to heat it slightly so it doesn't get too cold.
Yeah, there's some more questions on the 2018 on the bottle. Is that the year the wine was bottled? It is, yeah, again, a good question. I get it quite often. The vintage year you see on the bottle is always the year that in which the wine was made. So this guy's picked in 2018, spent 24 months in the this, right. So the year that you see is, call it the birth date of the wine. You'll also see on the back label there's also some handy information. So if you walk up to your friends and you serve the wine, you can just, there's a bit of a cheat sheet on the back, and you can just tell them about the clones and the soil types and everything. But you'll see the actual picking of this wine on the label. If you're keen on more of the wine making detail, some recipes done by Anna here, and the details of that specific year, you can scan the QR code and it will give you a detailed breakdown on this one. Another question was Syrah and bottles. Someone seemed to be confused on the bottle shapes. Again, like, do you put Shiraz or Syrah? It's up to the winery, what bottle shape they want to use. 90% of the time it's in this bottle. There's no rules as to what you can have. There's some guidelines and most people follow that, but there's no rule as to what you can or what you should be doing. Another question on where can we buy it? Online is definitely the easiest. It is in some shops, but again, for risk of telling you and where to go and it's not there or it's even close to you, online is the easiest. And if you want to qualify, discount, the best thing would be to sign up to our wine club. We've got all sorts of cool stuff that we do. So we do a quarterly selection for you, so you can choose if you want mixed red or white or only red. And with the wine club, you qualify for a really nice discount on all your orders. Qualify for a discount when you come and visit us at the restaurant, wine tasting. We've got some special wines that are for wine club members only. And you've got access to some of our older museum stock that's not for sale anymore. So go and check it out on the website. That's maybe best but I really recommend checking out the wine club if you're keen on ordering wines from us to qualify for that. Another question is, can John still speak, or does John speak a bit of Afrikaans?
Yeah, I kan so 'n bietjie praat, maar yeah, we get a bit rusty with that. But my wife's Afrikaans, so she puts me on place every now and then. So yeah, we have our sessions. Jan, can I quickly plate up and show you how to finish off? Right. So what we've done is I've added the pea puree. I've added the fresh peas as well. So you can see the risotto is really bright green. All right. So I like this consistency. Some people might prefer more rice. Some people like it thicker. That's the beauty of food. Do it how you really like it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to spoon the risotto. I have adjusted the seasoning. Always check salt and pepper. So it's really well. I'm not going to add too much acidity in there. I'm going to show you how we're going to finish it off on top. So be careful. If you want more acidity, a little bit of lemon or will go really well on the base. So I'm just going to spoon the risotto into the bowl. And then I'll move the camera now for you so you can see exactly what I'm going to do nice and close up. The whole peas, I kind of keep the skins on the peas for inside the risotto. If you again want to take it another step further, you're more than welcome to skin your peas, where you can just pop them out of the shell. It does take a little bit of time, but it is worth it as well. But sometimes you want that texture to come through. I'm just going to move this guy here. That doesn't fall in there.
He needs to do it all by himself. There's no team in the kitchen.
Yeah. Right. So can we see that fairly straight?
We can, yes.
Yeah. All right. So what we're going to do is, so that's the pea risotto pretty much done. I'm now adding our oxtail, which we braised. It's quite rich risotto, so you don't want too much, but the meat element is obviously the protein. So if you're wanting a lot, you can add it on. So what I normally do is I just drop it into the middle like that. Excuse my fingers if anybody gets offended by them. So what I've done here is, I'm just going to move that quickly. I've got a few garnishes ready that I did before we came through. So I sliced some spring onions up for us. Got some little bit of chives. Got some mange too, part of the pea family. I've got some peas that I've taken the skin off, where you can see a little bit of the halves come through straight away. So that's quite a nice, fine, little delicate thing. I've got a little bit of curly endive, endive bulb, which we then taken through, and I just sliced it up into nice small little pieces. That's quite bitter, so it'll add a little bit of bitterness to it. I added a little bit of fresh fennel, just not too many, 1 or 2 sprigs are going to be really nice. Some summer radishes, which you would find you just put in your normal salad. I've just quartered them and taken the middle out just to make it a little bit prettier. And then we're going to finish off with a few parmesan sprigs. And then I've just got some salad toppers, which you can buy at the shop. I know by you can get pea shoots and stuff in the shop. I couldn't find any in my shops yesterday, which I was quite upset about. So forgive me for that, but I really wanted to put on some pea shoots to finish off. So you always like to finish the plate off with exactly what's inside it, so people can see what they're eating as well. So what we're going to do is, just to finish it off, I'm going to just take this little bowl. I'm going to add the peas. I know Benguela Cove make lovely olive oil. We've got our own version, which has been branded with Lynn Italy, but it comes from you guys. Just going to dress that with that. Touch of salt on top of that. I'm just going to fold it around, and then I'm just going to spoon more peas on top, just like that. Then on part of the recipe pack that you'll find online is braised onions, or confit onions. What I've done is I cook them in the skin, in the oil and butter, so it's nice and soft, which you'll find over there. So I'm just going to place these on top. I know we're running out of time a little bit, so I'm just going to speed it up as much as I can for you. Right, then what I normally do is you just kind of play around with the little bits that I showed you. That isn't necessarily on the recipes, but again, have fun. Whatever you can find in the shop, cut it up, chuck it on top. Pretty much anything will work if you really wanted to. All right, then a little bit of mange too. I'm just going to make on top. And what we're doing is we're just building a little bit of a salad. So as you eat your risotto, it's not just rice. You're getting the different textures of all the different veggies and things like that. I quite like the endive. I'm just going to get little bits of pieces in through the risotto. I like to keep this on top because the risotto is warm. It will wilt all of these things really, really quickly as well. So we'll finish that with some spring onions on top.
Yeah, I can just imagine the creaminess of the pea risotto, of the the juicy tannins from the Syrah would work really.
Yeah, I think it's one of my favorite ones that you've made, Jan. So I think it would work really well. So there's just some chives, some fennel, and then last but not, I would love to put some pea shoots on, but like I said, I don't have. And then what I've done is I've just pre-shaved the parmesan into. You can just use a peeler really, and I just peel it off with the block, and then just add those on top like that. And then, let's see, a little bit rusty. We haven't worked for a couple of months. On top of that, and then I'll just do a crack of black pepper on top of that, and then we're done. And that's your pea risotto with braised oxtail and confit onions.
Fantastic. Looks great, man.
Oh, looks delicious.
Talking about working, you guys are about to open soon again, right?
Yeah, so everyone in the UK has kind of got to the conclusion that we could officially open up now. So we're quite lucky to get back to work. Our team's back at work on Saturday, so we'll start deep cleaning, sanitizing, and start prepping from scratch again to get going. And we'll open the restaurant next week, Wednesday, for afternoon teas. And Interlude itself will open up next week, Friday. We've had quite a good reception, so we've had many bookings, which has been great. And yeah, we were lucky. Well, I was actually worried that we'd miss out most of summer, so we get to work with some fun produce. Obviously, spring and summer in the UK is really fun, but winter kind of dies down with all the ingredients. So with all the last of the summer little bits, we're still quite happy. We can play with some green vegetables and lovely fruits and stuff like that for our dessert. So we should have some fun still in the next couple of months.
All right. Okay, John, thanks for joining us. That looks amazing, and I'll get that recipe for sure and have a first go at risotto, and I'll let you know what it's like.
Yeah, please do. I think a lot of people are scared to always make risotto, but it's something fun. You can't really mess it up. Just try not to overcook your rice too much and it'll be good.
Yeah.
So like we said, next week unfortunately can't be part of the program because we'll be busy cooking and gearing up because we're opening the next day. So I'm going to hand over to Annie, who is more than capable of cooking these dishes. So what I did is I created a few recipes. I think Annie's just going to tweak them slightly so we can make them more South African friendly. And then she is going to take it over from there. Annie and I have worked together for quite a few years now, really, over on and off. She was one of my first chefs that kind of helped me out of trouble when we were really short staffed when we opened our first restaurant. So she gladly came and helped us out for 6 months, and then moved over to BC, which was great. So yeah, hope everything goes well with you guys on your side, Annie and Johan, and hope we can chat soon.
Yeah, we're a little bit sad you can't join us next week, but happy to have Annie, of course, and happy for you guys to open. So yeah, all the best. Next week is a rosé wine. So Annie said she's still just working and tweaking on stuff that's available, obviously, and in season for us now. So it's going to be a fun one. I always enjoy Annie's pairings that she does with rosé. We'll talk about rosé wines in general, how we make it, different ways of making rosés from all across the world, and how ours compares to what everyone else is doing. So yeah, if you didn't have the wine this week, please make sure to try and get it. As I said, easiest way, but place those orders soon, because as you know, there is some delay on courier services. But if you don't want to sit on the fence next week and want to be part of the discussion and the tasting, get your hands on those wines. We've pre-packed them in a mixed case already. So all 6 weeks webinars, wines are pre-packed. So you can do a once-off order and have them all for the next 6 weeks. So yeah, I think that's it from us. We went a little bit over time, as I said, as we usually do with the first one. But yeah, I hope everyone enjoyed it. Let us know how those recipes turned out, what you thought of the wine. Put some images up and tag Benguela Cove, be it on Instagram or Facebook or Twitter, so we can see and John can be the judge of what you've done. Yeah, that's all from us. Thanks for joining us, and see you all next week then. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.